joining us today for our webinar with MentorWorks. I'm Mackenzie and I'm one of the 5 team members of the Sandbox. Today, MentorWorks will be taking us through a very informative session on the current resources and funds out there for Canadian businesses and how to apply for those funds. Just wanted to thank all of our community partners for supporting with the sharing of our events. It's really helpful, and like the Barrie Chamber of Commerce, Georgian College Henry Burdick Entrepreneurship Center, and the Small Business Center. It's been really great, so thank you. And just because of the recent news and updates, there is quite a bit to go through, so I won't take up too much time. Just a couple quick housekeeping rules for the webinar. So if you don't know, all the attendees are muted. We will be taking questions throughout the presentation, so please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and the resources will be sent out after the presentation. So for those who haven't been acquainted with MentorWorks, they're a team of government funding planners who work directly with clients to design and implement tailored solutions to support business growth. They work with Canadian businesses to develop a dynamic government funding plan that supports all areas of business investment. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Alex Barlow of MentorWorks to start us off.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and good to have you today. I'm going to get right into it. Exactly as Mackenzie said, if you've never met us before, we're an organization based in Guelph, and we work with companies of all kinds on their business and government funding strategies. So, you know, today's webinar really is about how companies can mitigate or offset some of those business losses that you're likely already seeing from COVID-19. How can you manage your overhead during mandated shutdowns? How can you manage your cash position until the expected recovery? If you've been watching any of the updates regarding the Prime Minister coming out basically every single day with these new programs, you've probably got a lot of details flying around, and you know, a lot of the actual application information is still in development. So today I'm going to show you what's actually out there. I'm going to speak to some things that are still to be launched that we're expecting to see, but most of this stuff now is starting to be available and accessible to you, and I'll be explaining how you can access that. If you've never met us before, we're about 25 people. We're based in Guelph, Ontario, but we do work across Canada, primarily here in Ontario. We've been working in the space for about 12 years, and that knowledge has allowed us to achieve about a 95% success rate across the board in our funding applications. We work with a pretty wide breadth of programs, and most of our clients, you know, work with us on multiple programs and initiatives to support their business. I've had a lot of great experiences working with Sandbox members and local Barrie companies, as well as in the wider Simcoe and regional counties. In the time that we've been working in this space, we've done over $1 billion in funding approvals for our clients, and it's been really exciting to be part of those projects. So we live and breathe this space. My background is a political science degree. I always wondered what exactly I was going to do with a master's and a BA in poli-sci, and it ended up that this was where I found my sweet spot. And we have a number of team members who are expert technical writers. We understand the landscape. We've done a huge number of these applications. We write some of the biggest applications right through to small initiatives. Just the amount of time that we've been in this space. We were founded in 2007 and 2008, right around the last sort of big crisis that we had. So we're familiar to with what government does in these times and what those programs can look like. We have really good relationships with the different government funds, and we know how to work through the processes, whether you get a decline, whether you get approved right away. And the biggest component that everyone's trying to solve right now is time sensitivity. How can we get liquidity? How can we solve financial challenges as quickly as possible in order to get moving? And the big value that we offer more than anything is your time savings. If you're anything like me right now, if you're a business leader, you are probably completely tapped in terms of your capacity and dealing with a number of regular business issues on top of all these extraordinary ones, while also trying to take care of your health, your employees' health, your family's health, there's just a lot of priorities. So today I'm going to show you some strategies for addressing 3 critical business challenges during this time. A note on sort of questions, you are welcome to post them. I can see them, Mackenzie can see them. If I can address it on the slide, if it's a point of clarification about the specific program, I will try and address it here. I recommend that if you've got a specific program about your particular business, my contact info will be up at the end. Sandbox can connect you with me. We can have a one-on-one discussion. So if you have really specific business focused questions, I'm more than happy to keep the discussion going. But for the purposes of the webinar, you are welcome to answer questions, and we will have time at the end as well. So what are your strategies? What's out there? What is the government launching? I'm going to focus on the immediate needs right now that businesses are trying to deal with this problem. And then what are your strategies for moving out of this issue into the latter parts of 2020? Because the government and both BDC, EDC, and a number of top economists in Canada have said, there's a strong demand in the economy. We're going to see a bounce back. Just how long is this going to take is sort of the question. So one of your number 1 tools as a business is EI. A layoff, no one likes that process. A lot of people don't want to consider that option, but it is something, if you have done it, or if you're looking at what strategies you have, if you think that you're going to be closed for the near future, one of the best tools to continue to allow your employees to have an income is to go into a layoff. Doesn't mean termination. You can try to talk about timelines for bringing them back. And then the EI resources begin for your employee, and they will go ahead and do those applications. I will share some links after the session regarding this link here. It's an excellent resource for how to apply for EI, and it's accurate. I've verified it. But there are several streams to EI, including sick benefits if someone is in isolation or can't work due to quarantine. And then there's a shortage of work and an involuntary work, which are really tied to the closure of your workplaces due to COVID-19. So EI provides an income replacement for staff. You've been paying into it as part of all of your contributions when you do your payroll, and that's why you do it. It's for these situations. It is probably one of the most effective ways to keep people at home, is to give them some income. So EI will provide 14 weeks to a maximum of 45 weeks. It's typically based on the best 2 weeks of employment you have in the last year. And it's 55% of those average insurable weekly earnings up to a maximum, which is $54,200. So recipients are getting about $573 a week. So it's not perfect, but it is there and open to your employees. If you are a self-employed individual and you do not qualify for EI, but as a result of this event, you do not have an income, the emergency care benefit is the tool that will replace that for you. It will be replacing EI, and it is open to applications as of April 6th. If you have already done an EI application and you do not qualify because, for example, you're self-employed, they are saying that they will move your application into the emergency care benefit automatically. They have had a huge number of applications. I think the last number they got was in a week, they had about 1 million applications from Canadians regarding employment insurance. So it is a slow moving process. They're doing their best, but they do give some tools for employers. If you are looking to file for employment insurance for your employees and you're wondering what codes to put in, if you call into Service Canada now, they mandate specifically certain codes to be entered regarding what reason for the layoff. Just note, you don't want to put in a lot of comments. They find the comments are really slowing them down at the moment. Your other option is, and this is especially more pertinent to manufacturers, is to look at work sharing. Work sharing allows employers to do a bulk application for all of their employees to reduce the amount of hours worked per employee. So a work sharing agreement can provide anywhere from half a day to 3 days a week, so 10 to 60% on average over the agreement funding for your payroll. And what it allows you to do is it supplements the days where you do not have work for your employees with EI. So for example, if because of a supply chain issue, you don't have the, either you don't have the customers or you don't have the material supply that you need in order to reach your targeted production to keep all your staff employed, having a WSP agreement in place allows you to idle them for anywhere from half a day to 3 days. All your employees share the work that is available for a few days a week. You pay them, and for the other days, they're supplemented for EI. You can note here that I've crossed out application must be submitted a minimum of 30 days prior to the requested work sharing. What's happening is that still is live on the website. It's information that is stated there. However, they are waiving it as much as possible, and we're working on a number of these applications. It is an area we can help companies with, and they have noted that they'll work with us to identify any companies who may need to get this in place quicker rather than the 30-day wait. So who's eligible? You've got to have had a year-round operation for a minimum of 2 years. You've got to show at least a recent decrease in business activity by 10%. Right now, there is a lot of excitement regarding this emergency wage subsidy, this 75% funding, and we haven't seen any of the funding available. I'm just getting a question if the work share is a result of COVID-19 or if it's a normal program. It's a normal program, the work share. The Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, the 75% we keep hearing about, will require that companies demonstrate at least a 30% drop, where for work share, it's only 10%. So consider that difference. This is more suitable for a manufacturer, and it's basically to help you cover your core employees who are eligible for EI and who agree to reducing their normal work hours. I haven't had any employers yet who have said that they are not able to get their employees to sign on to the reduced work hours. It is a process to do this application. All your employees have to sign it. You have to develop a recovery plan, and you have to get all those materials into the government. But the work share is a really good strategy if you foresee this impacting you in a longer term. Right now, any of the subsidies that are available are really focusing on a March 15th to June 30th timeline. Here for work share, we're talking about coverage that is specific to your business. It can last up to 76 weeks, and it allows you to go ahead and receive some supplement to your wages if you're going to have reduced work volumes. You do also have the ability, every 2 weeks, you provide them an update regarding your business. And so if things have changed, or if they've even taken a turn for the worse, you can do that and increase the amount of EI that your employees are getting to up to the 3 days. What will be difficult is to do a new application, or to do your application when things get really difficult. Our experience is that your speed to a work share application makes the difference between a larger layoff and actually keeping your business moving and, you know, offering some business continuity during obviously a pretty challenging time. So I'm getting some questions just about EI. Just to let you know, I'm not an expert on EI and what the repayment rules are if you earn more income than you should. That is a different question that I'm not able to answer. So not an answer I can provide you today. So a lot of talk has been about the temporary wage subsidy. So there initially was a launch of a 10% subsidy for your payroll deductions, up to 10% for the period between March 15th and June 30th. This is called the temporary wage subsidy. Now there's talk of the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, which is 75% for companies who demonstrate a 30% business drop. No details are currently available on the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, and I believe that it is going to be a special program that is different than this one, the temporary wage subsidy. So I'm going to talk about this one. know that in the next 24 hours, as soon as the information on the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy is available, MentorWorks will be sharing that information in a blog post, and we'll be speaking to what that is. But right now, this is a tool you have available for you. And if you are paying employees during this time, it is open to you, and you should be doing it when you do your payroll remittances. So what happens is, for Canadian employers, what you'll do is when you go and do your remittances for your payroll taxes, either through your CRA My account or through your payroll administrator like PayWeb, the deductions will be calculated and recorded. So you'll still pretend like you were going to go do your income tax deductions for all your employees, but you're actually not going to pay the full amount. And that is how they keep some money in your pocket as a business and just enhance your liquidity. So it is a subsidy that is available. They have not removed it. And what it allows you to do, I have the calculation here just to show you an example. So let's say we've got a full 2-week period that falls within the coverage period. So please note, this only works as of March 15th. That's the effective date. So if you have a payroll period that falls across that date, only a portion of the wages will be eligible for the subsidy. But let's assume this one is entirely in the coverage area. So let's say it's this coming pay period. And I'm giving an example with 23 employees where my gross payroll is $67,000 if I include vacation pay, or $64,000 if I don't pay vacation pay. It depends, every employer is different. Some people do it once a year. The calculation, my gross payroll that I'm doing my remittances for is $67,000. I do a 10% subsidy, which gives me $6,700. And then I look at my total remittances. For that $67,000, I'll be doing an additional $26K in remittances for CPP, EI, and income tax. I will remove the wage subsidy and calculate the new remittance of $20,000. So when I go to do my receiver general payroll liability payment, I reduce it to the 20,000. Sorry, the 24 is an error. We've been playing around with this because of all the new announcements. So in this example, a company with about 23 employees would reach the full 25K cap on the contribution in about 7 weeks. So over the project period. So really effective for smaller employers. The reason they've come out with this emergency wage subsidy and this additional program is because I think a lot of people were going, yeah, okay, but my biweekly payroll is $300,000. So I will be using this $25,000 in about 5 minutes. So that's why they've upped their game and discussed this additional subsidy. But again, the details on that are not yet available. And as soon as they are, I will share them on our blog. And I'm happy to share it with Sandbox to distribute to all of you. A big component of what else has launched is around credit. So the Business Credit Availability Program is what was originally a $15 billion program, has now become a $65 billion program with funding for financial institutions in the form of government-backed loans, as well as through EDC, BDC, and FCC, which if you're in the food space, you know as Farm Credit Canada. It gets a little less knowledge compared to our BDC and EDC partners. So one of the first tools you have is the Canada Emergency Business Account. This is an interest-free loan of $40,000 for small businesses and not-for-profits. They have to qualify. You have to show that you paid at least between $50,000 to $1 million in total payroll in 2019. And it allows you to pull in this $40K loan from your financial institution. It is through your financial institution that you will access this money. And what it will allow you to do is take this interest-free loan, and repaying that loan before December 31st can result in up to 25% or 10K of it being forgiven. So it's not a grant, it is a tool that's there for you, and the aim is just to help you float your overhead and your liquidity. This is a really great tool if you run a professional service or personal service business, for example. hair salons and different organizations that may not have the liquidity to cover some of their rent or leaseholds during a lot of closures that these companies are currently mandated to follow. There's also a loan guarantee program that has been launched for EDC, which now will look at domestic as well as export businesses. I know that Sandbox had EDC on about a week ago or earlier or late last week. Those poor guys are already launching new programs in the 3 days since that time. So EDC is working with financial institutions to allow them to extend new operating lines and cash flow term loans. And then the loans are due within 12 months. So again, it's about helping you manage the next 2 to 3 months with some additional liquidity. BDC is working with a number of financial institutions to co-loan money, basically for operational cash flow, again, to 6.25 million. And there's an additional credit loan through Farm Credit Canada if you're a farmer or a food processor, that's also available. All of these have just been announced literally on Thursday or Friday of last week, and they will be rolled out through your financial institutions in the next 3 weeks. If anyone has tried calling their bank or their EDC contact or the Business Development Bank of Canada, just know they are receiving a lot of phone calls. Most banks now have set up an automated process for you to book a time to speak to someone. Just be patient. I can speak for myself as well. The amount of volume of communications we're receiving is way higher than normal, and just trying to deal with that. Private banks or charter banks have also developed a relief plan called CBARP, or Canadian Bankers Association Relief Plan. I always love the acronyms that come out for all these different programs, but this is through the 6 largest banks. It's just services to offer immediate financial relief for small businesses. There's also a number of opportunities for consumers through these programs. You find them out individually through your bank. And it's everything from term loans, leases, operating lines, commercial mortgages, and of course, we've heard a lot about the same thing on the mortgage side. Right now, we're trying really just to alleviate any liquidity or cash flow problems that businesses may have, and as well as consumers. If any of you have gone to different economist presentations or listened to anything in the past little while, Canadians have a pretty high debt to income ratio. I think our business community is a little bit healthier, but most of our team members, most of us, might find it quite challenging to go more than 2 pay periods without receiving a paycheck, and it might even be it is worse than that for a lot of employees. So a huge number of resources. So there's 3 new slides to this. I presented on this topic a week ago, and we've added 3 new slides to the information, and I've already told you there's more to come. So all the resources profiled in this webinar are discussed in depth on our website. We have a special COVID-19 banner. When you arrive on our site, you can find all these resources as well as links, and it's being updated constantly. So I highly recommend that you check that out. And I will be sharing some resources through Sandbox after this with all the links from the session. I've got it all ready for you. So I know some people were noting they can't click it. Don't worry, it is there for you. Beyond some of these special measures, the government has a number of programs that are also available and open to this. Before I launch into that, I'm just going to look at some of the questions. I see someone asking if they can apply for work share for 1 employee. No, you will be doing work share for your facility and for all of your employees. You don't do it for a portion of them. So it would be for your entire team if you're looking at the work share. Some people are asking which businesses qualify for the temporary wage subsidy. It's pretty much open. If your business has less than 10 employees, the wage subsidy, the temporary wage subsidy at 10% is still open to you. It says that anybody's eligible as long as you have basically, except for very, very large firms, the rule on it is that you can't have more than 15 million in taxable capital on your last financial claim with the CRA. So I assume that all of our small businesses are going to do quite well in qualifying for this 10% wage subsidy. And if you Google temporary wage subsidy Canada, you find the webpage for it. It's live. It is different from the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, which is the 75% coverage, and that will require you to show a 30% reduction in your business. I have no idea how they're going to make you do that. Someone's asking how. And if you are hiring new staff and you are paying them during the upcoming period of March 15th to June 30th, they're eligible. Those wages are included. And I don't know if you'll be able to apply for both the 10% wage subsidy and the 75% emergency program subsidy. I can't tell you that for sure. Workshare is done on groupings of your employees, and you can do both temporary wage subsidies and your workshare. And I don't have any information on the 30% decrease in your business and how you show that. It's been a very common question in just about every press release and discussion of this program, and no one's come up with it yet. I am sure it's going to be addressed when they launch it. And it looks like the strategy they're going to use here with a lot of these tools is, if at the end of the day you didn't qualify for them, they'll be coming to get it from you later. So you can expect that your audit process and your future tax claims under your business are going to be heavily scrutinized in 2021 because they will be looking for people who did not qualify for this. And they've said that very clearly with the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, that companies that do not qualify for this initiative, who apply for it, will be paying it back. So that's the special funding. That is the unique programs that we've seen launch as part of the response to COVID-19, and this aim to sort of resolve some business challenges, or at least help companies address some of the challenges. I don't think that the aim here is to have everyone come out with no impacts to their business. It's to minimize it as much as possible and get us through, really what looks like right now, May and June is what the government's forecasting, at least another 8 weeks. So cash management is critical. Use this time to plan. I've shown you some of those tools and happy to continue discussing them one-on-one. And now I'm going to show you really some other tools around funding that you need to consider on how to support your business and what is out there for the next phase, or what can help you with projects that you still want to move forward with, but you may not have the cash position in order to undertake everything you plan to do. So when we work with you, we really encourage you to understand the landscape of programs that are available to you, and we can educate you on that. And part of today's mission is to help you understand what the landscape looks like. Then what are your projects, in this new normal? What is it that you're undertaking? Do they align with any of the available programs? Can you strategize and develop opportunities to take advantage of those programs? And then implement the strategy, and then of course continue to take advantage of funding. So if a lot of you are just looking at funding for the very first time in your business, that's fantastic. I'm glad that that you're looking at this, and I sincerely hope that a lot of these tools and programs are going to bring you a lot of value. I've been very impressed with the speed at which a lot of this stuff has been coming out. One of my #1 criticisms of government is that they're fairly slow moving. But if you've never used funding before and you're a long-term business owner, use this as a lesson. This is a space that existed before you've come to it now, and you want to ensure that you're aware of what's going on here and taking advantage of anything that is open and available to you. So when you're looking at funding, consider the fit. Even on the stuff we went through, if all your employees are laid off and you're not paying any wages for the next 30 days, you don't qualify for any of these wage subsidies because you're not issuing a payroll. So, think about the timelines, the expenses, and the impacts, and whether or not they align with your business. Some common impacts we see regarding funding, usually looking at revenue growth, export revenue growth. This bullet usually says job creation. Right now we're focused on retention. Having you achieve new levels of productivity and innovation. What is your management team? Is it diverse? Women-led companies, for example, are a huge area of focus. Are your employees being engaged, or is this a project about your C-level team members? And every program's a little bit different. So the programs that we talked about before are really about business continuity, keeping your staff, etc. What if you want to use funding and you're looking at how to be one of these individuals to help respond and, for example, build ventilators? The government has mobilized a lot of programs to create some specific opportunities around creating some funding tools for COVID responses. So if you work in the biomedical industry, if you're a plastics manufacturer who can make rubber gloves, if you have the ability to make protective equipment, the federal government has mobilized an organization called NGen. NGen is a super cluster. They have a large pool of funding to support businesses in launching and developing new manufacturing technologies. And what's happened is NGen has reallocated $50 million of its funding. And that funding has been launched for immediate response projects where they will give up to 100% of the costs, covering expenses between April 1st and June 30th related to COVID response technologies. So it could be screening tests, vaccines, antivirals, PPEs, whether it's ICU equipment, and also a big thing we've been hearing is everyone getting into making sanitizing and chemicals for cleaning. So this money's here. If your company has an opportunity to work in this space, or you know someone who's working in this space and has costs to scale up that production, for example, to make components for ventilators or rubber gloves, or they've got to figure out how to retool to build this technology, the NGen funding would allow them to cover those costs, and it is taking applications now. And the aim as part of the funding is that you agree to government procurement, and that the government has first right of refusal to your product and your supply of product to then address the need here in Canada. So the aim is satisfy that Canadian demand first and foremost to then manufacture that new technology or this product. So that's kind of an interesting one that's launched. Innovative Solutions Canada, they're issuing these calls for proposals. So again, if you're in the medical space, or if you're a hardware technology firm and you think you could create a solution, they will be launching these calls for technology and solutions to support the response to COVID-19. They've created a $15 million program, and they give funding anywhere from $150K to $1 million for prototypes. And they're providing opportunities for government procurement and testing opportunities with no fixed maximum. So here's a current call that's open. We're seeing more and more open right now. Currently, they're looking for a low-cost system that could monitor temperature, oxygen saturation, blood pressure, and pulse rate, and that would be wireless and would allow them, for example, to outfit a bunch of people in a ward with this technology to allow them to be remote monitored. Same thing, could we send someone home with COVID-19 if they have a piece of this technology on that allows them to be monitored and remotely and still do some self-isolation. So that's a current call for proposals. There will be a lot more, and we're monitoring them and sharing that information. But if you have the ability to respond in this space, is certainly an option. If you are looking at general business projects, and let's say through 2020 and 2021, you were considering going ahead and doing some investments in your facilities, or you were going to be commercializing some new technology and making investments, and now maybe a portion of your cash contribution to do so is gone. There are several programs from the provincial and federal government that cover the region to allow you to undertake those types of investments and get some additional support. The first one is through Business Scale Up and Productivity, BSP. It's run by FedDev Ontario, and it runs a no interest loan. So you're borrowing it at 0% of up to 35% of your project. So if you were about to start a $2 million expansion project, but now the next 2 months are really going to impact you and you're not sure if you can go ahead and do so, this program will come in and make a contribution of up to 35% to a maximum of 10 million. You're borrowing that money for 3 or 4 years until your cash flow and you're seeing the productivity impacts or you've launched the new product. And then you begin repaying that money over 5 years. It's always interest free. You're only ever borrowing and repaying the principal. And to give you an example of how flexible this capital is, I have a number of clients who are in repayment for this money, and they have received a note from the government saying during this time, we will be pausing all of your repayments. You do not need to make any payments. We will come back to you in 90 days and discuss a go forward strategy. So they've paused all the repayment on this money during this time if you had already had a loan from them. If you qualify in the regions of Southwestern Ontario, which is these 2 big blocks here, Barrie is covered in the region, as is Bruce, Grey County, Simcoe County, and Orillia in this sort of box over here to the left. This is the Southwestern Ontario Development Fund, and then its sister program, the Eastern Ontario Development Fund, provides funding on investment strategies that you're making, usually in a manufacturing facility, in terms of equipment, facilities, ERP technology, software, etc. And it provides up to 15%. If you're in a rural community, that up to 15% is a grant, and it's provided to you with no interest. It's just given to you as you spend it. If you are a larger firm, over 100 employees in a more urban area, so Barrie, for example, would be one of the main areas that would be considered as sort of more urban. It has a population over 100,000. You get funding at 15%, but it is a loan, and that loan is at interest. Right now, the province lends money at prime plus 3%. I would suggest to you that if you're looking at a loan through a program like this, probably better just to go to the banks, given the huge availability of capital that we just went through from the government, because this program is doing it at interest rates that are higher than what is currently probably being offered by the BDC if you're a healthy company. In rural communities, so I know there's a bunch of people on the line who might be in Simcoe County or Bruce or Grey counties. The Community Economic Development Stream is also offered by FedDev. It's another one of these loans, but it does up to 50%. And it's for companies in rural communities who are going to make investments in their facilities and equipment. And then this allows them to leverage, again, one of these 0% interest loans for their facility, equipment purchase, etc. Really great for rural companies. They're really interested in what the impact is to your supply chain. So for example, if you use a lot of outsourced resources in your small community, or you're a grain drying facility and you support 200 farmers in the region, then they would be interested in seeing this, this program be the home for your application. There's been some really big announcements around R&D, and especially in the health industry. The Strategic Innovation Fund is a program that's been out since 2018. It's announced $192 million stream for healthcare in response to COVID-19. Your really big pharmaceutical companies will be applying to that. It's for very, very large budget sizes of at least 20 million. So it's a huge program, hopefully, that we all see the benefit from through some additional production capacity here in Ontario. If you're a smaller company and you want to do some R&D, whether it's COVID related or not, the IRAP program, Industrial Research Assistance Program, provides 80% of payroll and 50% on Canadian contractors. It says to a maximum of 10 million. A lot of them will do projects you know, ranging in the 50 to 200K range. The Barrie region has a fantastic IRAP rep, a guy named Winston, and he meets with companies and assesses whether or not he can provide you the forms, whether or not your project qualifies. And here they're really looking for new product development or process development. And typically you're in a technical software or manufacturing industry in order to leverage IRAP. It's much more difficult if you're a professional service to do that. It's going to be focused on more IP and technology development processes. If you're in the food industry, you have a whole special slew of programs. This is near and dear to my heart. I lead a lot of our food projects. So if you've never heard of the Canadian Agricultural Partnership and you're an agricultural or food manufacturer, there are special grant funds available to you to subsidize projects or investments of equipment or in your marketing budgets. It's a program run by OMAFRA, and we are expecting an application opportunity in the month of April or May. So stay tuned. You have to wait for the application intake for that one. In Ontario, if you are using this time to assess your business, how do I pivot? How do I become more lean? How can I reduce costs? The Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Organization has received a large pool of funding of $3.7 million to work with up to 140 Ontario companies and give them each 100% cost coverage to $25K to work with a third-party assessor or technical expert on a project. One of those projects could be, I need to make an investment in an ERP system and I want to know how to do that. And I'm going to work with a third party to tell me what system I should purchase. This program's open and taking applications. You have to work with a third party. The funding covers their costs, and it has to be a third party that is approved by CME. I know a number of them. I can help you get connected to one of them if you like. It's a fantastic program, and it's just a way, if during this time, if you want to bring in some outsourced viewpoints to help you with your business decision making, that is a good way to do that through that program. It's also expected that this program will have a follow-on that will offer equipment funding, but we haven't seen that confirmed yet. Hiring, interesting time to hire. If any of you had co-op students, they probably got pulled out of your facility this month. The programs that fund co-op students are still taking applications for summer candidates who might be joining you. A bit hard to predict if they'd be allowed in your facilities or not, but it's a program that provides 50 to 70% to 5 to 7K for 16-week employment for a co-op student. I have some essential businesses that are still forging ahead and doing their applications. I just did one for a payroll co-op the other day for a food distributor, and they're getting 7K to hire a young candidate from Toronto University to work with them for the summer as part of her co-op work term. There are also traditionally funds to hire co-op or recent grads, and that's more of a permanent hire. You're hiring them for at least 6 months, but you get 50% of their wages, usually to a maximum of about $15,000 to $20,000, depending on the program. So this is different than any of the other COVID-related programs. This is a true grant. It's being paid out cash to you as hiring those individuals. And then for some regions of Northern Ontario, we have specific hiring incentives. This does not cover Barrie proper, but picks up in Algoma. So just some options around hiring if you are continuing to bring staff on. Manufacturers have some traditional programs that continue to be available. We have a training program for 100K in funding that's available for the end of 2020. It will start giving out money this summer for training that you're doing, and then right through to the end of the year. It funds labor as well as third-party costs for training. And then for automotive suppliers, there's special money for you to adopt ERP and different technology for your business. Just a question coming up: if co-op students need to be permanent residents or Canadian citizens? Yes, they do. That is required for them to be fundable. And my last program before I open it to questions is just a note on your export expansion. The export component's kind of interesting right now because none of us are really allowed to leave the country and probably don't really want to, but Can Export is your main export development fund. If you have an application in and it includes travel, please note it's going to be kicked out to you so that you can revise it, or it will be declined because they cannot pay for your travel outside of the country right now. Currently, they are only taking applications for online marketing. So if you're trying to figure out how you do your 2020 marketing strategies for your US customers or outside of Canada, CanExport will fund your digital marketing strategies for the US or for other markets. They are interested in always helping you access new markets where you are doing less than 10% of your current sales. But it is a great program and an excellent tool. We're still writing it, and I'm happy to chat with you about whether or not your digital strategies would be eligible. So imagine now, as I go through all these programs and I'm giving you really the top end samples, the aim here is not to have you use one of these. And if you just use funding during your response to COVID and you never come back to it after that, I just want to tell you that you are making an error in judgment around your business. Use these opportunities. This is before COVID, but imagine that you had a large $4 million expansion strategy on the books for your business prior to this happening. The government and everybody in sort of major economists in Canada have said that the problem right now is not a problem about demand. The market was healthy. The demands for products and our services were growing. And we were all trying to grow that and probably had investment plans to address that. However, because of COVID and the next 2 months, maybe your cash is now no longer in a position to fully support the projects that you wanted to undertake. The government programs that existed before are still here and perhaps are even more equally important, because now you are able to leverage these tools to offset the fact that you are not in the same cash position that you were in when we started the year. So something here that you can consider. If you liked this webinar and you'd like to join some other initiatives, we are running a lot of them. A number of these have been updated to focus more on COVID. So on April 15th, we will be talking about COVID, as well as on April 7th, I believe. So we'll be changing some of these to be more COVID focused and continuing to discuss these programs. I'm going to put my contact info up and open the question box here, and I'm going to let Mackenzie tell me if I think we're opening the lines for the question.
We'll start some questions. Carol has said the emergency care benefit is $2,000 a month for non-eligible EI. Is there ever a scenario where someone on EI would receive less than this?
Yes. So your EI is 55% of your eligible earnings. So for example, if you earn $40,000 a year, your EI payment is going to be less than that. But if you qualify for EI, you can't apply into the emergency care benefit. They will push you into EI, I think. I am not an expert on EI.
Are temporary employees eligible for the wage subsidy? Were they originally eligible for the 10% program?
The employees and the payroll that is eligible for any wage subsidies is related to your payroll. A temporary staff person is not on your payroll. They're on an agency payroll. And so you cannot get credited for the wages that you pay them. That is an expense in your business, not a labor cost.
And he also asked, can you please verify if it's possible to apply for the 75% wage subsidy and later apply to work share, or are we still waiting on more information to determine this?
I don't know the answer to that. There's no details yet on the 75% wage subsidy, so I can't answer it. It does appear that you can apply for the temporary wage subsidy of 10%, as well as have employees on work share, but that is not 100% clear.
Eric asks, we are a business in development, in construction actually, where we are not opening to generate revenue until first quarter of 2021. We have one employee currently that I believe is just over the lower end of the 50K threshold in salary. Do we qualify for the 40K zero interest loan?
That would be a great question for your banking partner. And I would recommend that you approach a bank to ask that question. They will be processing all the applications for the Canada Emergency Bank account, I believe is what they're calling that.
You mentioned that the WorkShare and the work subsidy programs are stackable. Interested in doing this, but I can't see anything online on the WorkShare website or the wage subsidy program that you can do this.
Yeah, they also haven't said that you can't do it. If you're paying payroll and you want to apply the 10% subsidy for the temporary wage subsidy, when you do your remittances, it appears that you can do that for the temporary wage subsidy. For WorkShare, I mean, it's a big process to undertake, but it does appear that the two are something that you can do in combination. I think this question here is, do you need to have acreage to access agricultural programs, or does urban agriculture apply? I think you're asking about the Canadian Agricultural Partnership Program. That program wants, if you are a producer, wants you to have a farm business registration number. They do have a processor application where people could be applying for projects related to buying packaging assets or different production equipment. For example, like bakeries would be eligible for that. So Kathy, that could be an opportunity for you with that program. I'd have to talk to you further. I'll just tackle the last question on programming, and then someone's just asking for regarding our services. For the emergency care benefit for people who aren't qualified for EI, how does it work with regards to a work slowdown? Can we work as it comes in, or do we need to shut down altogether? I believe that if they are going to run the emergency care benefit like they're going to run EI, and this is speculation because that program application launches on April 6th and the full details are not yet available. When you work and you are on EI, the amount that you work, you report to Service Canada, and that income is deducted when you hit certain thresholds from your supplement. So they're going to reduce your payment. So if you are working while receiving the emergency care benefit and you earn an income, you do have to report it, and they will reduce your payments that you're getting as a result under the emergency care benefit. Someone's asking, I'm looking into changing directions, keeping my staff, and getting into a farming company specializing in aquaponics. Starting a new company of any kind is very difficult generally. So I will state that first. So early stage companies that do not yet have revenue or who are brand new into a business area are harder to fund because they don't have the track record in that space. And often the government will prioritize applications that are lower risk. So that's a challenging question to ask, and I would suggest we're happy to chat with you.
So how would a business's e-commerce sales affect the asking received for CERB? A business owner is both personal expenses and business's expenses. So would those sales affect the CERB amount received?
At this time, as a business owner, being self-employed, you are allowed to apply for that emergency benefit. I don't know if you will actually qualify. I can tell you that if you do pay yourself out of your company, I believe that they will be looking for opportunities to reduce your benefit as a result, but I am guessing.
Nicole's asking, yeah, would they consider the expenses of the business and personal expenses of the sole entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think they would look at whether or not you're pulling, they're looking at giving you a benefit. That benefit is a set amount. Everyone's getting the same thing. And basically they're saying if you didn't actually qualify for it and you had other income, you can expect that you'll be paying it back. So it's something that they are stating, but it's pretty spotty still. Mm-hmm. The last question on here that I can see at the moment, I'm certainly welcome them to continue coming in if you have any of them, is people are asking how we work, how our fee structure works. We're a fee for service company, so I don't charge anything to look at your business and make some recommendations around programs and what could be open and available to you. When we actually write applications, that's when we invoice you for our services or charge you for the application writing. It's traditionally done on one of two models. The federal government does not allow a consultant working in grants to charge a contingent fee model, i.e. you win, you pay. So when it's a federal program, I have to charge you regardless of the outcome upon submission and completion of the application. And we have fees for each program. It's based on how many hours are involved. When we can do a contingent, which is you win, you pay, then we're happy to do that. It's an option we can provide to people. It's usually more around the 15% mark. But most companies never pay us more than that 15% of what they actually achieve back in funding. And we try to stay out of projects that are really small. So if you're considering a project for $5,000 or $6,000 in funding, I'm always happy to tell you it's great, it's eligible for funding, but probably not a fit for us, just because a lot of these applications are a fairly substantial amount of work, whether you're asking for 5,000 or 500,000. And so we try and keep that in mind when we're working with companies, and really encourage people to do things themselves when it's not a good fit for us. Just, you know, there are costs to being involved in these activities. So that's how we work. I've had my contact info up here. I do welcome if you want to give me an email or set up a time to discuss with me and ask me some information. If you haven't chatted yet and you're looking at some of these financial supports through the banks, BDC, EDC, or Farm Credit Canada, Sandbox can connect you to a lot of those reps. I have their contacts as well. I really recommend that if you have not yet taken any action, and I see right now that 15 of you noted in the poll that you're investigating your options still, you do want to take action soon, because the wait list and the number of applications in the queue is growing, but also all of a sudden we're all going to run out of money in our business. So if you are continuing to pay costs and you have yet to fully take action or consider your full options, this is the week to do so. It's really important. You know, we've now announced here in Ontario that schools are not going back until May 1st. So you've got at least another 30 days of, you know, some pretty major disruptions to your businesses. And I really encourage you to look at this and take action. And if we can help in any way, I'm more than happy to hear from you and see if I can give you some advice.